Greetings, Terrarians, Khaios here. Welcome to episode 9 of the Buildy Bunch server Let's Play. This episode is going to be a bit of a different one and a much shorter one as well. The worst thing that could happen in this Let's Play happened. We made a ton of progression and I'm not going to be able to show it all because my audio clips were completely corrupted. Unfortunately, Windows updated on my computer over the past weekend while I was asleep, and that update broke my virtual audio cables. I was not aware of this at the time of recording our Let's Play. I use virtual audio cables to help me with recording collaborations. They usually allow me to record in-game sounds separately from the calls going on in Discord, separately from my mic, which allows me to more easily balance all of the volumes in editing. So because of that, I use them when I'm recording with OBS. After Windows updated, the cables weren't functioning correctly and I wasn't aware of that. No in-game sound was captured at all during this recording session, and the audio from my mic sounded extremely quiet and highly distorted. It essentially rendered all of the footage that I recorded completely useless. To make matters even worse, we made a ton of progression in this session. This video is going to be recapping what happened, and it's mostly going to be showing a time-lapse of the build that I did for this episode. But you won't have any of the interactions or the shenanigans that happened during the Let's Play, and I do apologize very much for that. I removed my virtual audio cables, so this won't be a problem in the future. I know I say this every episode, but I highly recommend heading over to Fury's channel this week to watch the progression that happened in this play session. We got a ton done and I'd love for you all to be able to see it. He should be posting his video later today if he hasn't already done it. I'm sorry again that this won't be a standard episode, but for now, let's get on to the build. So the goal for this episode was to defeat the Wall of Flesh and start hard mode. I got a lot of base building done throughout the week in the now infamous episodes 8.5 and 8.75, but there was one more thing that I wanted to build before we actually entered hard mode. One of the very first things that I want to look for when we enter that difficulty is the wizard NPC. He will allow me to create a few things that will be very useful for enhancing my base appearance. Since he's the primary goal for me after the Wall of Flesh, I thought it would be fun to build a unique house for him. I hopped onto the server a few hours before we were meant to meet up, and I picked out a nice forest location for the build. I wanted it to be fairly close to one of the pylons, and I saw two good options for that. One was to the right of Fury's base, and the other was to the left of our desert pylon. Thankfully, I chose the desert pylon because Fury ended up using the land outside of his snowy castle. The main reason why I settled on this location specifically is because it has two fairy logs next to each other. These logs are scattered all around the surface of the world. At nighttime, one of them is randomly selected to spawn capturable fairies. These fairies are only found at night and they run away when you get close. They can be caught with a bug net and they can be placed in jars like butterflies can. Or they can be released underground to lead you to treasure. But they will only spawn at one log per night, so having two here helps the chances of getting them quite a bit. To take that a step further, I spoke with the others on the server and I decided that I'm going to purge the world of all of the other fairy logs except for these two, so this build will get fairies every single night. But that's for a later episode. As far as the wizard tower goes, I want something that feels old and worn, like it's rickety and could fall down eventually. I want it to be overgrown with vegetation because in my mind, the wizard would be far too busy focusing on his magical experiments to focus on upkeeping his tower. Normally for a stone structure, I would use some stone slab, stone accent slab, and a blend of ebonstone brick and palladium column. There are two issues with that. We have a Crimson world, not a Corruption one, and we are not yet in hard mode, so I don't have access to either of those building materials at this point in the game. Luckily, we do have a green dungeon, which in my opinion is one of the best looking stone brick blocks in Terraria when painted gray, especially if you want that structure to look worn down. I can accomplish a similar look to the ebonstone palladium column combination by leaving gaps in between the green brick and filling them with boreal beams that have also been painted gray. Furthermore, I want the tower to not look like a single structure. The goal is to make it seem like the wizard adds a segment to the tower whenever he needs to, but he's very lazy about how it's done, so it isn't always centered. I wanted the rooms to overhang from the lower levels, and I want it to look rickety, but I didn't want to make it look like there's no possible way that it could hold itself up, so I add some wooden supports using rich mahogany wall, shadewood fence, and living wood wand, all with brown paint. For the roof sections, I thought that using dynasty shingles would be my best bet. Since the wizard will be living there, I want to match his color scheme, so I painted the shingles purple. Specifically, I use normal purple paint with blue dynasty shingles, and I do this for a very specific reason. If I were to use purple paint on red dynasty shingles, or if I were to use deep purple paint, the shingles would turn out extremely vibrant. While in certain circumstances that's not necessarily a bad thing, remember that I want this to look old and worn. Using normal paint on blue dynasty shingles makes for a much more faded color than the red shingles or deep paint do, and that faded purple is exactly what I was after. It gives the feeling that these shingles have been sitting under the sun for many years. However, I do use some red dynasty shingles in the roof with some gray paint for accents. Once all of the exterior walls and the roofing was complete, it was time to move on to the background walls. The downside to having a green dungeon is that I personally prefer the tiled and slab walls that come out of the blue dungeon more than the green one, so it is a bit of a give and take here. I know that many of you are going to say, Khaios, just go to another world, get a blue dungeon, and bring the materials here, and yes, that's technically an option, but the other players and I haven't discussed if we want to allow that kind of thing or not. We will have to talk about it later, though I think the general consensus is that we would prefer to do as much as we can on a single world, and I'm okay with working what I get out of the green dungeon. So, for the background walls, I went with the green brick from the dungeon. In hindsight, I should have also grabbed some green slab and tiled walls while I was down there, as they would make for some nice accent pieces, so I might have to go back later and update this tower. That aside, the vast majority of this wizard tower will be made out of green brick wall painted gray. But I rarely use only one single type of wall for the interior of any room. I usually try to give it some sort of accent lines or colors. For medieval builds like this one, an easy way to add a splash of color to the gray walls and to vary the wall texture is to use wooden supports. Good options for this are rich mahogany, shade wood, and large bamboo walls painted brown. In this case, I went with the large bamboo and rich mahogany walls. It's just a shame that there isn't a horizontal version of the large bamboo wall as well. It would look so good to have that texture in both the vertical and horizontal directions. There are also other ways to vary wall texture when building a stone brick structure like this. I'm lining the tops and the bottoms of the room with gray brick, which are much smaller in appearance than the green brick, and they add a nice splash of variation. In between those two walls, I place rows of gray painted iron brick as well. Then, using some wrought iron fence, I work on placing the windows. Typically, I try to avoid working with glass when doing medieval builds. I think that fences or holes in the walls are just a more suiting look. I might add stained glass windows to certain medieval structures, but I don't think that it's a good fit for this decrepit wizard tower. To make the barred windows stand out even more from the rest of the background walls, I like to add frames. I prefer when the frames have a much different texture and often a different color to the surrounding walls. In this case, I'm using sandstone brick painted gray. This brick has a much smoother texture than any of the other walls that I've used so far in this build, which on its own makes the window catch your eye even more, but in addition, they are slightly brighter than the other walls when painted gray. Once all of the background walls were completed, I started to work on placing the furniture and details. Unfortunately, Blue Jay, who was also on the server at the time, distracted me a few times with some shenanigans, and I went back and forth from the wizard tower for a bit. I didn't expect to lose all of my audio, and I was anticipating showing what transpired between Blue and I, so I don't have a time lapse to show me placing all of the furniture or details, including a massive telescope. I can, however, show you the final version of the build before I get into recapping what else happened in this play session. So here we are at the final build. Now, obviously, the wizard's here, which means we're in hard mode. That's because I'm recording this after the fact that I found out that all of my audio was broken, and I'm just going to show you guys the build now that everything's done. That also means you're going to see a bit of the progression that we made. I have wings. That's part of the progression, but I'll talk about that in just a little bit. Let's take a look at this build. So as you can see here, I made a massive telescope, and as the wizard is demonstrating right now, he's peering through it, which just looks fantastic. In fact, I want to take a screenshot of that real quick because I want to use that in my thumbnail. I think it'd be a pretty good thumbnail. So here we are. You're watching me record a thumbnail live. There we go. Okay, so moving on. I've got a lot of plants in here. I've got grass coming through the, well, not grass, leaves coming through the windows, and vines and leaves climbing up all of these supports. I put purple banners around the place. Mushrooms are growing on top of various things, especially because apparently I'm the mushroom theme king in this series, so I might as well throw little mushrooms in various different builds. I might eventually come out here and do a large red and white spotted mushroom that kind of matches this green mushroom, I believe. I think that's the green mushroom that's been painted red. I used green dungeon furniture, obviously, because we have a green dungeon, and then some of the lighting comes from the underworld as well. We've got some crates. And we also moved the merchant in over here because he doesn't like the wizard likes him. Oddly enough, the merchant doesn't love any other NPC. It's kind of funny, kind of suiting. So since we decided to move the merchant out into this wizard tower, I think next time I want to not only add a large mushroom out here, but build a small shop attached to this tower, either on this side or the other side. I think that would be a nice touch. But this is just giving you an overall look of how everything in this tower is coming together. I'm really happy with how everything looks. It needs some more work, and I need to go through the world and break all of these wooden logs so that at night fairies will only spawn at one of these two. So, with that out of the way, let's take a look at progression. Obviously, we killed the wall of flesh, and we got the wizard. That's a given right here. Obviously, I have wings. Currently, I'm the only player to have wings, because I got that giant harpy feather when I was making the sky bridge in the previous episode up here. And I wanted to put that to use right away. So when we hit hard mode, we got the wizard, and then I went onto the sky bridge, farmed wyverns for a little bit. I killed 2 of them, made myself some wings, and here we go. I'm nice and fancy now. In addition to that, a lot of these drops for the Ankh shield were dropping. We got most of them just by looking for the wizard and exploring the Hallow. And so after everybody else logged off, I went ahead and I grinded out all of the materials for my Ankh shield. Obviously, I have not reforged the modifier on this. I don't need melee speed. That's going to change. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. And I do have plenty of money for that because I gained a lot of critters in the last episode, and we're up to 13 platinum. Speaking of critters, let me just grab my safe and place it here. We also got a gold mouse, which you saw at the beginning of this episode where I edited. I don't know if you actually noticed it, but it was on screen. The golden dragonfly, which I didn't even realize I caught until I almost sold it. I thought it was a yellow dragonfly. And while I was working on the decorations, the furniture for this build, a gold butterfly spawned. So we now have several of the gold critters, including a gold goldfish, which I got lucky enough to have spawn in my base. Furthermore, I have brand new weapons. I got the Hurtful Frost Staff. I have a strong crystal vial shard, which I'm absolutely loving, and it's the entire reason why I've been so successful in my explorations so far. We were lucky enough to find a Hallow Mimic, and we barely killed it, and that's what it dropped. Several Medusa heads have dropped because they have been spawning at my base like crazy. I'm sure I could show that to you right now. I might have to crank up the spawn rates just so you could get a little taste of that. Also, we've got the poison staff, which dropped from... See, of course, the first enemy that spawns here is a Medusa. And fungi spores. Apparently, Blue died here after we logged out to a fungi spore. And Blue is terrible at breaking his gravestones. Speaking of Blue, sorry to go off on a tangent, but he vandalized my base with over 50 flamingos again. So we need to think of a way to get him back. So if you're watching the video still at this point, leave a comment on what we could do to Blue to get him back. He also placed a little guide shrine here. I replaced it with a blue jay because that's more fitting than the guide voodoo doll. And I also said, here lies Blue. His plea for death was answered by rolling cactus because I killed him using a rolling cactus after I saw him place this in my base. One other big thing happened while we were online, and that should be in this one? No, here. Yes, I got a hallowed key. Now this happened on screen with Fury, so I'm pretty sure that's going to make it into his video. I'm really bummed out, very, very bummed out that my audio was all corrupted because we made so much progress. And that's going to wrap up my really brief recap of everything that happened. I don't want to spoil everything that's going to be in Fury's and the others' videos. That's not what I'm after, so that's why I'm not showing the video of that. I could show the video of it without any audio and just talk over it, but I don't think that would be as enjoyable as me talking over me building my wizard tower. That's a little bit different than me just speaking over videos of us actually doing a let's play. So be sure to head over to Fury's channel later today and check out the let's play because it was a lot of fun. We made a ton of progress and it's definitely worth checking out. I apologize for my audio corruption in this video and that you can't see what happened this week. I'm extremely bummed out about that, but it is what it is. Life will go on. Episode 10 will be back to normal. I got rid of the virtual audio cables, so everything will be back to the way that it should be. Next episode, I'm going to be working on updating this, adding a little shop, adding a big mushroom. I might even have time to go back to the surface and do something with this sphere that I want to deal with. I'm not gonna talk about this just yet, but I will do something with it. So next episode should be 9.5. For now, thank you all very much for watching. I'll catch you all later. Happy building!